Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
I'm John Anderson.
Nice to meet you. I'm Melissa.
Yeah.
Um,
So it was good to talk to you the other day on the telephone.
I'm sorry. I'm not very good with telephones right now. I'm sorry if I was incomprehensible at that point, but I just can't deal with phones right now. So
I totally understand. It's totally fine, and it's nice to have an opportunity to talk to you in person.
thank you for seeing me.
Sure. So why don't we just start at the beginning, and you can tell me a little bit about what you told me on the phone about what happened to you in the beginning of June.
So Jane Wallace. She's my cousin. Her mom and my mom are sisters. And my mother is an addict. She tries to pretend otherwise, but no. But let's not go there. So when we were growing up, my mother was in and out of rehab. She tried to clean herself out, so obviously she couldn't have me in rehab. So I lived with the Wallaces, my aunt and Jane, of course. We're about the same age, a couple of months apart, and we grew up like sisters for the time up until I was 8. And then one day my mom shows up and says that she's clean and that she can take me away and raise her. She can raise me. But my aunt, Jane's mom, thought that that wasn't the case, and God knows she was right, but we're not going there. They had a huge fight, and because the Wallaces hadn't legally adopted me, my mom was able to take me away, and because she just got mad at my aunt and refused to let me get in touch with her, who I think it was more of a mother to me than my mom ever was, and or even Jane. So I couldn't get in contact with her for the last more than a decade. But then I moved out of the house a couple of years ago and went to college, and one day I was just thinking about what a nice life I had with the Wallaces, and how I wanted to, at least get back in touch, if not more. So I found Jane on Facebook, and so this is about earlier this year, I'd say about 6 months ago or so. We got back in touch, and it was my last semester of college, and I was working on finishing up and getting a job. So then, finally, now that I have a job, we decided that I'll fly over to Seattle from Florida, where I live, to go see her. And so we were supposed to meet on June 3rd, but then unfortunately that didn't happen. And so I flew in and went to the Paneras and was waiting for her. And my flight was early, and I was just sitting there killing time. But then she called and said that she was running late, and she was apologizing so many times because she wanted to see me so badly. It's been so long, and we miss each other.
And does she live in Seattle?
Yes. No, she actually lives in Ellensburg, but that's close by, so she was gonna drive.
Okay.
Which is why we thought Seattle would be convenient. So she was driving over, but then so she was apologizing about being late and that I have to sit and wait at the place. But I told her that was completely fine. I'll just, I hadn't had breakfast, so I'll just, get something to eat. But then, I just heard her scream, and then there was a crash, and then just like things breaking, and all I could hear was her continuously screaming that something crashed into her, and that she just, and then she said that her legs were bleeding out and that she couldn't move them, and that the car was crushing her legs, and she really, it just felt like, she said that the car just fell on her legs, and I don't know if I'm making sense at that point, but that's what I heard, and I was in shock. It was hard for me to hear her scream in the way she was, and she's my sister, my cousin, but she's like my sister, right? So she was screaming, and I didn't know what to do or where she was, or if I mean, if should I drive out and check on her? Should I call 911? If I do, where do I send them? I mean, what kind of help does she need? Is there a fire, medical aid? What? I just didn't know, and after a point, she kept screaming over and over again, and just stuff kept breaking, and that's all I could hear. And at some point, I just went into shock. So after that point, I really don't remember much.
So just kind of taking a step back, so you had, and my gosh, that just sounds so traumatic, but I can't even imagine. But so you were at Panera, she calls you on your cell phone, and then you have a few minutes of a conversation, and then you hear a crash, and then all this transpires, and you're hearing her screaming. So this is all while you're at Panera on the cell phone, and
she was on her way in, and she said she was about 20 minutes away, but I don't know how far 20 minutes away it was, because I hadn't been to Seattle in ages, so I didn't know exactly where she was. So
and was she on the interstate?
Yeah, she was on the interstate, and I guess it's I-90.
Okay.
If I remember right.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. You can just check back. But yeah, she was on the interstate. She was driving over, like I said, and was about 20 minutes away when she called and was talking to me. So.
And do you know what actually happened? What the accident involved? I think you told me on the phone that a semi swiped her, and then her car rolled. Is that right?
That is what I found out after the fact.
Right.
But at the time, all I could hear was screeches and crashes. So, I mean, I didn't know what was going on. So.
Right. And I know this is really hard, and it was probably super hard to assess time when you were there. Do you have any kind of a feel for how long? I mean, you obviously had some kind of conversation in the beginning where you were actually able to talk to her, but then do you have a good feel for how long you maintained that connection and heard her cries and her screams for help?
The phone call went on for about 8 minutes, so I mean, we were talking for some part of it, and the rest was just me listening to her crash and scream. So, I mean, I couldn't tell you what portion though, but I can just, that's what my phone shows.
Right.
So.
But you felt like you had heard a good portion of the accident and then the aftermath where she was.
Pretty much. I mean, it pretty much pulled out my guts to hear her screaming the way she did, because I mean, they had to amputate her legs and broke both of her arms, so you can well imagine the kind of pain that she was going through and the amount that she was screaming at the time. So
did you end up seeing her then? Were you able to connect with her then at the hospital, or what happened after that?
I did, and I saw her after the fact but it wasn't until they had her in the ER, and she was stable at that point, but really seeing her in the pieces that she was at that point, it wasn't. I don't want anyone to go through that. Trust me.
Right. Right. So, I mean, how has this impacted you since that all happened?
I can't use phones, as you can tell. As the call goes on, I get more and more incoherent with time, and I think you can vouch for that fact. When I talk to you, I was after the first few seconds, I just go catatonic at that point. But apart from that, I can't sleep. Every time I try to sleep, her screams just come back, and I wake up, sweating, and it's almost, I haven't slept almost since the accident, and it's affecting my life and my work. It's a new job. You understand that I have to, I'm still on the probation period, but I have to deal with people all the time, and yeah, it's tough when you haven't slept and you're dealing with all of this. It's not the easiest, and so my manager's not very happy in the way I've behaved with certain customers when, well, customers always get on your nerves, so I don't have any patience, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it past the probation period the way things are going right now.
Have you sought help from any trained professionals for the...
I am seeing a therapist, but she says it's going to be a while before I can even deal with things, let alone, put it behind me.
Right.
So.
And has your therapist given you any kind of diagnosis?
She has. She says I have post-traumatic stress, but I thought that happened only to soldiers.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, that's what she said. I really don't know.
Right.
Because, I'm an English major.
Right.
So, I don't know anything about diagnoses.
Right, so. Right. So, I mean, obviously, this has been just a super traumatic event, and gosh, I just can't imagine what you have gone through. When you had anticipated this reunion with your cousin/sister after all those years, the claim that we're interested in pursuing for you is called bystander negligent infliction of emotional distress. And so basically to compensate you for the injuries that you received from witnessing this horrific event. So, there's some parts of that claim that have certain requirements, and based on your story that you told me today, I think what we need to do next is do some research and make sure that what you experienced fits into the letter of those elements, and then we'll get back in touch with you and decide kind of where to go from here. So, but I very much appreciate your coming back in. Take good care of yourself as you continue to kind of work through this, and if you can think of anything else that you want us to know that you think would be helpful for us to know at this point, of course, please don't hesitate to call or email or whatever kind of
work. Just gonna email, please. I can't deal with phones, sorry.
I totally understand that. But we'll get back in touch probably in about a week or so if that works for you. And
that sounds good.
Okay, well, it was very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Take care, and we'll be in touch.
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.